All right, hey everyone, welcome back. If you're here listening to the HIV RNA Test Guide podcast, chances are you're pretty serious about staying informed about HIV.
That's right.
And you're probably familiar with, well, hopefully you are, the huge network of over 4,500 testing labs across the US.
Absolutely.
So today, we're going to do a deep dive into something that's been making, well, a lot of noise lately, EBT-101. I know there's a ton of buzz about it, and it can be, well, frankly, it can be really hard to sort out the hype from, the actual hope.
I really can.
So in this deep dive, we're going to break it all down. Like, what exactly is EBT-101? How does it even work, with this whole CRISPR technology? What's coming out of these early trials? And, what does it all really mean for you?
For sure. And while we do that, we'll remind everyone about all the confidential, affordable testing options that are out there right now.
Okay, so let's jump right in.
Sounds good. When I think about EBT-101, what really strikes me is just how different it is. We've been, managing HIV for so long, but EBT-101, well, it's aiming for something much bigger, like elimination, not just management.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really important point. So to break it down, what exactly is EBT-101?
Well, at its core, it's an experimental gene editing therapy developed by Excision Biotherapeutics.
Okay.
And it's designed, and this is the really groundbreaking part, to actually get rid of HIV in the body, like completely edit the virus out of the infected cells.
Okay, so that brings up a really important question for me. Like, how is that different from how we've been treating HIV traditionally with ART?
Right. So ART, antiretroviral therapy, that's been amazing. I mean, it suppresses the virus, gets the viral load down to undetectable levels, but it's ongoing. It doesn't eliminate the virus.
Right.
EBT-101 is being developed as a potential one-time treatment. You take it once, and it's designed to provide a more permanent solution.
And the key to all of this is CRISPR, which, we hear about a lot these days.
We do.
How would you, explain to someone who, what's CRISPR in, simple terms?
Yeah, the best way to think about it is, imagine incredibly precise, molecular scissors.
Oh, okay.
And these scissors can target and then cut out very specific pieces of DNA. So in the case of EBT-101, they target and cut out sections of the HIV genetic material.
Wow.
And it's not just the virus that's floating around in your blood, it's the HIV DNA that's actually integrated into your own genome inside the infected cells.
Okay, so, that sounds super complex. So why is that such a big deal? Why is this different?
All right, so think about it this way. One of the biggest challenges in curing HIV has always been those sneaky reservoirs. The virus, well, it can actually hide out in different cells all over your body, dormant. And it's basically out of reach for the standard medications. EBT-101, with its gene editing approach, well, it's designed to actually go after these reservoirs and dismantle them. And that's what makes it so different from traditional therapies.
Okay, so that brings up another question then. So how do they even test this? This sounds pretty cutting edge. How are they making sure that it works and that it's safe?
Well, you're absolutely right. It is cutting edge. And back in 2022, Excision Biotherapeutics started the very first human clinical trial.
Okay.
Now, it's super important to understand this is just the beginning. It's what's called a phase 1 trial with only a small number of participants. And at this point, the goal isn't even necessarily to prove that it cures HIV.
Right.
The two main things they're looking at are really vital. First, and this is always the top priority, is it's safe for humans.
Of course.
They need to figure out if there are any serious side effects. The second thing they're looking at is, does it actually work? Does it reduce or eliminate that HIV reservoir?
Okay, so who are these people that are part of this trial?
So they're adults who are living with HIV, and they've had an undetectable viral load for at least 3 years, thanks to consistent RT. But here's the interesting part. They actually have to stop taking their RT during the study.
Wow.
And this is crucial because if EBT-101 hasn't done its job, hasn't suppressed or eliminated the virus, well, their viral load's going to start to increase again, what's called a rebound.
Right.
And this rebound lets the researchers know whether the therapy has actually achieved what's called a functional cure.
Okay, so where are we at? Do we have any results from this human trial yet?
So we're still waiting for the results from the human trial, but there were some really encouraging studies done earlier in animals.
Okay.
And in some of those cases, EBT-101 got rid of a huge chunk of the HIV DNA, up to 95% in some cases.
Wow, 95%. That sounds pretty amazing.
It does, but it's really important to remember, these were animal studies. What works in animals doesn't always translate perfectly to humans. Human biology is way more complicated.
Of course, of course.
So while these early results, they definitely give us hope, we need to be realistic and wait for the human data to really know for sure.
Okay, so this leads to, I mean, the big question, right? Can EBT-101 actually cure HIV?
Right. And this is where things get a little bit nuanced because we have to be clear about what we even mean by cure.
Right.
Researchers often talk about two different types of cure: functional cure and sterilizing cure.
Okay, and what does each one of those mean?
All right, so a functional cure, that means the virus is no longer detectable in your body and it's not causing any harm even if you're not on treatment. There might be like tiny, tiny amounts of virus still hiding somewhere, but your immune system's got it under control.
Okay.
A sterilizing cure, now that's the holy grail. That means every single trace of the virus is gone, completely eradicated from your body.
Gotcha. Okay. So which type of cure is EBT-101 aiming for?
So right now, EBT-101, it's focused on achieving a functional cure.
Okay.
But, of course, everyone hopes that maybe eventually it could lead to a sterilizing cure. But it's really important to remember neither of those has been definitively proven in humans just yet.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense to be cautious. I mean, this is all like still early stages.
Absolutely.
So I'm sure a lot of our listeners are wondering this too. What are the challenges?
Yeah.
What are the limitations? What are the things that we need to be aware of as we learn more about EBT-101?
Right. Great question. So a few things. HIV is really good at hiding in those reservoirs we were talking about.
Yeah.
And it can get into all sorts of tissues like your brain, which makes it even harder to reach with any kind of therapy. Then there's CRISPR itself.
Oh, okay.
It's really precise, but there are risks like what they call off-target edits, meaning it could accidentally change some healthy DNA, and we don't know what the consequences of that could be.
Right, great.
Researchers are working hard to make the technology even safer, but it's definitely something to be aware of. And then, of course, there's the big elephant in the room. If EBT-101 does work, it's going to be a very complex and probably expensive treatment. So the big question is, will it be accessible to everyone who needs it, regardless of, their income or where they live?
Right, that's always a huge factor. So looking ahead, what's next for EBT-101? What are the next steps?
So this phase 1 trial, it's really just the first step in a long process. If the initial safety data looks good and they see signs that it's working, then it moves on to phase 2 and phase 3 trials.
Sorry.
Those trials involve way more people and are really designed to get a clearer picture of how well the treatment works in a larger, more diverse group. They also need to follow these participants for a long time to see if the virus stays suppressed or if it comes back.
Okay.
And it's important that these trials include all kinds of people, different ages, ethnicities, backgrounds, to see how the treatment works across different populations.
Right. Makes sense. So let's say everything goes well, those trials are successful. What happens then?
Yeah.
Like, how does it actually become available for people?
Okay, so if the trial data is strong, Excision would have to submit an application to the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, for approval.
Okay.
And that's a super rigorous process, and it can take a while, sometimes years. Depends on how strong the evidence is and whether the FDA has any, further questions or concerns.
Okay, so for our listeners out there who are living with HIV and they're hearing all this exciting news, I mean, where does this leave them right now? What should they be doing? What's the takeaway?
I think it's really important to emphasize that for right now, RT, antiretroviral therapy, it's still the most effective way to manage HIV.
Absolutely.
It's been incredibly successful at allowing people with HIV to live long, healthy lives. It's the gold standard, and it represents decades of, amazing scientific progress.
And, even with all this talk about potential cures on the horizon, I mean,
Yeah.
HIV testing, it doesn't lose its importance, right?
No, not at all. Testing is still absolutely vital. Early detection, it means people can start RT sooner, and that leads to better outcomes for them, and it dramatically reduces the risk of transmitting the virus to others. Knowing your status, it's really the first step to managing your own health and protecting others.
Absolutely. And for anyone listening who's maybe, concerned about HIV, wants to get tested, wants to do it affordably and privately, where can they go for that?
Well, if you're in the U.S. and you're looking to get tested or just want to learn more about your options, HIVRNAtestguide.com is an amazing resource. You can find quick, affordable, and confidential testing locations all over the country.
Okay, so let's step back for a second.
Sure.
I mean, there's all this hype, right? We were talking about it earlier.
Right.
EBT-101 sounds really, really promising. But, I mean, how do we balance that with, realistic expectations.
That's a great point. EBT-101 is no doubt one of the most exciting things to come out of HIV research in a long time. It really gives us hope for the future, but we do have to be cautiously optimistic, and we have to base our understanding on the facts, the scientific evidence as it comes out. We're not there yet.
Yeah, so EBT-101, it could be the future of HIV cures, but we need to see more proof. We need the data from those human trials to really know for sure.
Exactly. Human biology is super complex, and research takes time.
It really does. Okay, so let's recap. What are the key takeaways here for our listeners?
All right, so EBT-101, it's an experimental gene editing therapy using CRISPR.
Yeah.
And its goal is to actually remove HIV from infected cells. It's in those early human trials, which means we only have a little bit of data from people so far. If it works, it could offer a functional cure, but we don't know that for sure yet. And until then, getting tested and sticking with art, those are still the most important things for managing HIV.
Absolutely. It's all about staying informed, getting tested if you need to, and just keeping up with the science as it moves forward.
I agree. Lots of exciting developments happening.
So true. Well, hey, if you found this deep dive helpful, please like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. It really helps us get this information out there. And if you're ready to take control of your health, head over to HIVRNA-guide.com. You can find reliable lab testing options near you. Stay informed, stay safe. And remember, science is moving forward, and so can you.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
All right, well, thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.